Well, Protestant reduction refers to a fourfold change in how the Protestant reformers viewed the world. Protestant reformers see themselves as pruning back things they see as human developments since the time of Scripture, things that they see as like a strongly developed papacy, a strongly developed applications of the sacraments, and applications of the treasury of merits. They see themselves as returning to more looking at Paul, looking at church fathers like Augustine, and they see themselves as taking away things that had accreted later. Protestants see themselves as returning to the sources, much as the Renaissance had returned to the sources of the Greco-Roman tradition. Protestants saw themselves as returning to the early church era. They saw themselves as going back to a simpler Christianity that had not developed as many what they considered accretions in later centuries. What do we mean by a cosmological reduction? That means looking at the world not as an organically interrelated place where our minds participate in the things that we know, and which then we can see the whole thing as orchestrated by God through the divine providence, but we see it more as a place that, well, we sort of know things in name only. We're starting to say we know things by the physical sciences, and then we also have a much lower, like there's suspicion of human reason. And so there's a more Augustinian suspicion of reason that is taken to a further level. Protestant reformers want to separate the world from God and separate philosophy from God. They think that this is sort of the Catholic Church, intruding philosophy into the gospel. And so they see themselves as simplifying. Protestants are suspicious of the things beyond the scriptures. They think this is human learning, human knowledge that might puff up our pride. Rather than simply depending entirely upon Christ for our salvation, they think that studying and knowing the world in a more profound understanding is going to be a source of pride. Now, what do we mean by an anthropological reduction? Well, anthropos is the Greek word for man, and so it's a lower view of the human being, not seeing us as a body, soul, whole with a nature that is somehow knowable by reason. Rather, we are simply a being who is all totally depraved. That their only concern is, well, we're just concerned about the fact that we're wounded by original sin, which they say is total depravity as a result of original sin. So therefore, instead of saying the human being is the kind of being whose redemption could mean being made just by Christ's grace and receiving the divine indwelling, they say, no, we're going to view the human being as something more like a metaphysical dotted outline that is just filled with total depravity. And so therefore, we no longer see ourselves as a being who would be indwelt by God after being redeemed by Christ. Well, Thomas Aquinas had seen human nature as a body, soul, whole, where that even if we are wounded by original sin, we are a being that is something that God can heal and perfect by grace. That we are not just total depravity, we have the goodness of being, as it were. We have the goodness of being, and therefore, even if that cannot save us, we need to be redeemed from sin. Nevertheless, we are the kind of being who can be healed and by grace and indwelt by the Trinity. Now, what is the apostolic reduction? The Christians had, since the time of Christ, consistently seen the faith as transmitted in the church, which is overseen by the successors of the apostles who exercise a genuine Christ-instituted office of teaching, sanctifying, and governing. And so this is part of how God is with us, is that he gives us a reliable and Christ-authorized teaching, sanctifying, and governing authority. But Protestants say, well, no, this seems like a lot of development later on. Where are all of these offices as we see them? Where are they in Scripture? how is the office of the papacy as we see it in Scripture? How is the priesthood with this idea of transubstantiation? Where is this in Scripture? And then, of course, the church had developed very detailed levels of diaconates. The intricacy of the development of the apostolic office, and they see this is subsequent human development. How is this scriptural? How is this something that comes from Christ? So Protestants will have different degrees of understanding of church office. Anglicans will keep the appearance of the episcopate and the presbyterate, but their theology will deny the apostolic succession in the strong sense that the church talks about. The Lutherans will say, well, we'll have bishops, but we don't see them as connected in any way to the Pope in Rome. Calvinists will say it's whoever reads the Scripture correctly. The authority arises from whoever reads the Scriptures correctly. And so and then the leaders are chosen by the city council. So you will see different views, all of which involve a reduction of understanding of the church office. Protestants have an understanding of church office. They simply see it as something less than the strongly sacramental understanding held by the church. And it goes all the way to even Anabaptists, who have a very loose and more localized understanding of church office. What is a liturgical sacramental reduction? Protestants wondered, how does a detailed system of the Mass, with the Eucharist being claimed to be the body and blood of Christ, the transubstantiation, where does the liturgy of the hours? There is this detailed system of sacraments which are believed to be genuine means by which God communicates grace. This seems to the Protestants to contain God. Well, aren't you just reducing God to like a machine who dispenses, like the sacraments are like grace dispensers? They don't see sacraments as something organic to the Christian faith, something completely scriptural. They see them as something of a grace dispenser. Well, if you get an indulgence, well, sin all you want. It seems like you could be saying sin all you want, and then you can gain an indulgence. They see it as something that is developed by humans, and they don't understand how it is actually an organic part of the faith that is transmitted in the scriptures in the church. Lutheranism is more sacramentally minimalistic because it sees only baptism and the Eucharist as sacraments. Now, not in the same sense the church does, but the church believes in 7 sacraments. And so Luther is going to say, well, baptism and the Eucharist, so only these 2 sacraments of initiation, and then he will say that the Eucharist it's more consubstantiation. It's not the idea that through the administration of the priest, Christ actually comes present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, in such a way that you would even reserve him in the tabernacle after Mass. And baptism is seen as it's a sacrament, but not in the same strong way, because Luther has the theology of justification by grace alone and faith alone, which does not have a strong place for the baptism as understood by the Catholic Church. Baptism incorporates you into the church, but it does not completely take away original sin. There's a much more emphasis on the personal decision, the personal faith, and then the grace that God gives in light of personal faith. Calvin is even more minimalistic. He does say that there's a mystery regarding the Eucharist, but he's not clear what it is. And in his case, the church office is it's simply people that are the local people read the scriptures correctly. There's no role for Rome. There's no role for a further way than your own city council. And so there's a lower view of how sacraments function than the Catholic Church holds. There's still total depravity, still grace by faith alone, by faith alone. Calvin's idea of real presence is, we could say, more spiritual. It is not one of substance. It's not a transubstantiation view, but it's a more spiritual view. But it is definitely reduced from a Catholic understanding. Zwingli will see sacraments as even lower. They are ordinances that are given in Scripture, but they are not seen as effective by their being done. They're not ex opere operato.